Hey, everybody, welcome. So glad you're here for this wonderful episode 235 of Rush Roundtable. We've been doing this a while and it's been fun. I hope you've been enjoying it. We're going to talk about the song How It Is tonight. But before we get into that, I want to introduce the panel. And so we have Paul Simon, the other one, Rob, the other Paul, and Alex. And just love working with these guys. What great panelists, and just such a yeah, I love it. I love working with you guys. You're awesome. Uh, Before we get into the episode, though, I want to talk about real quickly Paul Collins. Uh, don't want to say
Oh,
much, just acknowledge Paul because
I, I,
I'm sorry, Peter
time out, dude.
Collins. All these Pauls, and I
Yeah, a
just
lot of balls.
you know, Peter Collins. Thank you. He produced four of Russia's, I would say, greatest albums, except all of them are greatest albums. But he did Power Windows, Hold Your Fire, Counterparts, and Test for Echo, and recently passed at the age of 73, two,
Yep,
73. So yeah, time doesn't stand still, though we wish it would. Another uh, Peg passed recently, now Peter, and so yeah, time moves on, but great people that helped Rush give us great music. Anybody else want to chime in on Peter Collins?
Has worked with other bands as well. Queensryche, two of the best sounding albums that they did, Operation Mindcrime and Empire. So some truly innovative production work there.
I find his
Okay.
albums were just sound wise, were just the quality of the sound that came out, like Power Windows and Hold Your Fire, and they're amazing, right?
Yeah, I've always referred to Power Windows as such, and I know I've said it when we were doing those episodes. Feel free to look back in those episodes where I called it a three-dimensional mix in 1985.
Hmm.
The guy knew what he was doing.
Sure
Mr.
did.
Big. Mr. Big.
Yes. All right.
His
Not
nickname. Not talking
the
about the band.
bag, not the bag, but Mr. Big. All right. So, okay, before we get in, one, episode 235. If you've been enjoying what we do, you keep coming back, subscribe, like. We'd appreciate that. Tip us on Ko-fi. That would be awesome too. Um, Link in the description. And also our supporters, our sponsors, support them as well. It makes all of this possible. So we appreciate you so much. So we are going to talk about How It Is from Vapor Trails. And I love this song so much myself. And if I'm not mistaken, R40 was the only time it was ever played live. And I remember Getty talking about they just pulled that out of the vault and said, "Oh, let's do this. This is such a great song," and it is. It is. The intro is, inspirational and happy, even though it's a song like so many on Vapor Trails that is dealing with struggle and angst. So with that in mind, I'm going to read the first verse and then just turn it over to these crazy people. Before I do that, Paul Simon,
Yeah.
the tarot card for this song, because there's one for every song on Vapor Trails. What do we
Yep.
got?
For this one, we've got the Hanged Man, which you should be seeing on your screens now. And
There it is.
according to my sources, what I looked up, the Hanged Man represents wisdom, circumspection, discernment, trials, sacrifice, intuition, divination, prophecy. The halo burning brightly around the hanged man's head, signifying a higher learning or an enlightenment, and it can symbolize altruism, self-denial, a certain disinterest in worldly things. It is the passivity and the time to leave things still, in a parentheses.
Wow. I'm not
Again,
going to start talking about that because I take up the whole episode. So I'm just going to read the verse and turn it over to you guys. Here's a little trap that sometimes catches everyone. When today's as far as we can see, faith in bright tomorrows giving way to resignation. That's how it is. how it's going to be. What do y'all got?
Yeah, quite the mood lifter from the previous track. So he definitely has a different outlook. It's, I guess, I don't know if I want to say it more optimistic, but definitely a different perspective on where he is in this sort of sequence of tunes. You know, he seems to be in a different headspace for sure.
Just going off the verse, I'd almost say this is despair. Like the music and the lyrics don't match to me at first, because you've got a nice high tempo opening, but then you've got, okay, here's a little trap, and notice the processing on Getty's vocals. It's a little bit more clear or easier to hear on the remix, but you still hear it on the O2 mix. But it's this almost like a vocoder or through a megaphone type effect, but saying here's a trap that sometimes catches everyone. In other words, this happens to all of us. Now, funny to think that starts off with this can happen to all of us, but faith in bright tomorrows giving way to resignation. That's how it is, how it's going to be. In other words, when you get trapped in that, what else is there? Or you lose that idea that there's ups and downs, highs and lows, and it's that the despair in that actually doesn't match the music at first. Obviously, there's more to tell in the song, but as far as first verses go, that's a horrible place to be trapped in if you can't see how things, this is how it is, but I know how it ought to be, or isn't it supposed to be like this? We talked about acceptance last week with The Stars Look Down. This, I think, is going to be sequenced perfectly and coming out of that, but as far as openers go, eek.
And as far as Neil looking to always write in a universal fashion, I mean, anyone who was listening to this album pretty much was aware that what happened to him in the years previous. So you know that he had the worst possible things that could punch someone in the face as a family man, specifically him. I'm not being sexist. And the idea there of saying, well, we know he came back from it. So, I mean, you're already going into listening to the song, recognizing that, he was pushed to rock bottom and then came back. So there's kind of the spoiler there that it's like, we're probably going somewhere with this.
At least I hope he is.
So yeah, you're in that space, and this line, when today's as far as we can see. You're not looking past today. You're just in this moment where things aren't as they ought to be, and you want to have faith in bright tomorrows, but you're caught in this moment. So there's a resignation, right? It's how it is. It's how it's going to be, And I think what he's wanting to do in every verse in the chorus is, I think will speak to this idea that when you're caught between how it is and how it ought to be, don't give up. Because, and I don't want to say too much to get ahead of myself when we get to the chorus, especially with the idea of imagination, because imagination is such a powerful force for making things how they ought to be. But yeah, so that this verse sets the entire song up, right?
Agreed.
You're in this place, and it's hard to see past where you're at now, especially when it's not so good. So, of course, it's such a cloudy day. Seems we'll never see the sun, or feel the day has possibilities, frozen in the moment. This is a time when you don't want time to stand still, right? But it does. Frozen in the moment, the lack of imagination between how it is and how it ought to be. Between how it is and how it ought to be. That is power packed. Go.
That's got to be hell on a thinker. Anybody who thinks deeply and resonantly and then finds themselves frozen in a moment with a lack of imagination, that's hell. I can't see a way out of this. I can't see beyond this feeling. I can't see. And again, the irony of it having like you got Alex playing the 12 string and the mandola in both the intro and in the choruses, and it's this very musically, it's even a more beautiful sounding song than we've had. We've talked last, excuse me, couple roundtables, and it's getting heavier and heavier and heavier. You go from Ghost Rider to Peaceable Kingdom to The Stars Look Down. It's like I need a break from that. It's heavy listening, and musically we get it, but it's not instantaneous. There's a journey going on here. You mentioned when resignation came up. That's usually what happens just before acceptance. So we're getting there.
Neil's got his kind of stoicism that he adopted for himself with the "it is what it is" type of situation. So just the recognition, the awareness, the like you said, the acceptance of this is how it is. This kind of makes me think of the donkey as far as the donkey being equidistant from the two food sources, and which one do I go to so it starves to death because it can't decide. Not that this is exactly the case, but the notion of being caught between the two places.
Put a pin in that for the interlude, by the way.
Done. But you also, I'm sorry, I'll be quiet. I'll let Rob.
Oh, that's okay.
Too much.
You go.
Fine. Yeah, I was about to mention that as far as what Paul was talking about in regards to, yes, the 12 string, the mandola, very D major, very bright tonality in that intro, and he certainly keeps at least the 12 string part of it for the chorus, but that verse, just the going to kind of a driving vibe with kind of a G mixolydian. It's rock, it's major, but it's got that flatted seven, so it just kind of has that punch, nice little contrast. I thought I would mention that, and now I'll be quiet and let Rob talk finally.
I was just gonna say real quick, if Paul mentioned if you're a thinker and you have this lack of imagination, it's pretty hellish. But my impression of this is like he's on the motorcycle, and if you're on a motorcycle, you want to make sure you don't have too much imagination going because you have to be focused on the road. So you don't want to go too dreamlike when you're on a bike. So it's kind of important to have a focus. So I think that I just wanted to mention that real quick. So I just get that impression that he probably was on his bike and these ideas were coming to him as he's on his journey.
Yeah. So I'll add a couple things. What it seems to me this entire song is about is things aren't the way you want them to be, right? It's not how it ought to be, and that traps you into being able to think about other possibilities. That you're going to get past this. It's going to be okay, because when you're in that, somebody, you know how it is. I mean, you're having a tough time and somebody comes up to you and says, "Oh man, everything's going to be okay." You don't want to hear that at that moment necessarily,
You're not going to
because
believe
it's
it.
not.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a cloudy day. Seems we'll never see the sun because everything's cloudy. So you can't even feel the day as possibilities. So you're frozen in that moment. So you don't have this imagination to think about, to get past, just like, the very first verse, faith in bright tomorrows giving way to resignation. When today is as far as we can see. You just can't see past where you're trapped.
Hmm.
So, and we've all experienced that. That's one thing we love about Rush. You hear a song and you go, yeah, it resonates with my everyday real lived experience. So the next verse, the first one was, here's a little trap that sometimes catches everyone. Here's a little trap that sometimes trips up everyone. I like the way, the different metaphors were chosen. When we tire of our own company. Wow. Sometimes we're the last to see beyond the day's frustrations. That's how it is, how it's going to be.
See, I think that hints at, especially the last two when we tire of our own company, sometimes we're the last to see beyond the day's frustrations. There's a hint that other people are the solution or can be the solution in that. That's how I take it, at least. Because, like, I'm, I keeping it in a first person narrative. If I've just had it and I can't see the possibilities, I don't have the hope. But it said we're the last to see beyond the day's frustrations. We tire of our own company, calling it out right there. There's only so much thinking you can do when you're trapped inside your own head. And eventually the thinking becomes cyclical. Again, bringing up that whole phrase of this too shall pass. That goes back to olden times, but westernized, where are we at? Reflects a temporary nature or ephemera. Help me with this one, David. Ephemerality of the human condition. That neither negative nor
That's too many
positive moments
syllables
in
for me.
life. Neither negative nor positive moments in life ever indefinitely last. This too shall pass. And the hardest time to accept that is when you're trapped in this kind of headspace that we're describing here.
Back in the, I don't know, 80s, late 80s, early 90s, had a friend that used to say, "Oh, this too shall pass," like gallstones. It's
Yeah,
gonna hurt. You know.
so comfy.
So
I can attest to that.
okay. So, any golfers in the panel tonight? Okay. I haven't played for a long time. Used to play a lot more. Uh, but when you're up on the tee and hole after hole, you cannot hit the ball straight. You hook it, you slice it, whatever. You just can't do it. And your buddy that's up next says, "Oh, it's obvious. You weren't standing right, or you didn't follow through on your swing." What I think Ryan Murphy will love this metaphor, being a lover of golf that he is. But it's like when you're there, when you're in it, you just can't see it. But somebody standing outside can see, well, this is what's going on, you know. So you tire your own company, last to see beyond the day's frustrations, you know, and then you resign. That's just how it is, how it's going to be. Again, back to the first verse, that's how it is, how it's going to be. You're just stuck, right? So then back to the chorus, such a cloudy day seems we'll never see the sun. I feel the day is all uncertainty. And we as human beings really just hate not having certainty. It's we don't like it. Burning in the moment, trapped by the desperation. And again, this is the guy that wrote Free Will, right? I'll choose free will, you know. But sometimes, yeah, trapped by desperation. Where are we trapped? Between how it is and how it ought to be. And again, between how it is and how it ought to be. So, roundtable.
Frustration's increasing. Now it's desperation. Before it was frustrating and frozen in this moment. I'm, feeling this hopelessness, almost describing hopelessness, but not calling it out and naming it. But now it's burning in the moment. No, I feel the day's all uncertainty. Burning in the moment, trapped by the desperation. This is agony now. It's intensifying.
Yeah.
Also, like David, that you brought up the aspect of you don't want to hear everything's going to be okay, because Neil directly addressed that in his book, as far as the notion of people who would have these platitudes and whatnot. And it's sort of, there might be some part of you that minuscule part that believes that it will, but it's like the idea of someone walking up and handing it to you, it's just obviously all kinds of no. I was about to throw out some kind of sarcasm, but I wasn't about to.
At those moments, we want a little empathy, or at least sympathy.
Or
Right?
space. Some people need space. Look at the guy that wrote this.
Yeah. A lot of space, 50,000 miles worth of space, on there. Yeah. So then there's an interlude. Somebody have something to say about the interlude? as I recall. Yes, no.
I feel like Paul was going to say something. We put a pin in that stuff.
One of the Pauls.
Oh, no. That's going to be for the lyrics in the interlude after the interlude. So sorry, my bad on that. No, music. I'll have a lot in a minute. No, musically, I like the fact that there's no flashy solo, no nothing like that. It just reaffirms what we're hearing with the 12 string, and then I believe the mandola we hear in this part too. It just reestablishes that, like, that's the. This is a very subjective way of approaching it, but I think that's the hope. His choice of chords and their choice of melody. It's not the drive that you hear in the choruses. It's breaking out of that. And I think it goes well into the lyrics that are about to happen.
Right. I'm glad you brought that up because, we're talking about the lyrics, which is what, because I'm a language guy, I focus on the words so much. But two things. And we've probably said this several times, is that Get an Owl had a way of looking at Neil's lyrics and expressing them musically and capturing, what those lyrics were trying to communicate. And then a shout out to Alex. Alex can shred, he can rip. His solos are amazing, but he could also just not solo and play some chords, um, and some notes and put them together melodically, and it's like perfect for the song. Where so many bands, it's like, okay, verse, chorus, verse, now guitar, lots of notes, solos, see how fast we can go and all that. But Alex was so much more creative. No disrespect to the ripping solos, because we all love those too. But yeah, he could just do something that wasn't it didn't meet the era's expectations for what a guitar player ought to be doing, and it fit the song perfectly. So, with that in mind, foot up on the stair. You got to go one stair, one step at a time. Foot up on the stair, shoulder to the wheel. So in other words, even though you're in this place, there's the lack of imagination. You can't see beyond the day's frustrations. All of these things, you still have to keep on going. And like Neil said, his little baby soul needed movement. Just keep moving, keep moving, keep moving. You can't tell yourself not to care. You can't escape those feelings. You can't tell yourself how to feel. Right? Maybe, you have to navigate and negotiate how you deal with what you feel, but you can't choose your feelings. The feelings act upon you. You don't act upon them. So that's how it is. That's how it is. Interested to see what you guys have to say, because there's something there that seems to be a resolution to the whole conflict of the song.
I love the fact it doesn't say "and how it ought to be." He just says, "That's how it is." That's extremely. You say as much with what you don't say as what you say. Okay, we need to establish how this is. What am I have to have something to accept. Neil did say that he took inspiration from "Of Time in the River" by Thomas Wolfe, and I have a passage that fits it perfectly. But just for a setup, one of the characters there, during a dialogue, they're mourning a 26-year-old who died too young. And the passage starts with, "Helen, for God's sakes, don't throw your life away. Don't destroy the great creature that lies buried in you somewhere. Wake it up, make it come to life. Don't talk to me of this old man's life as if it were your own. It is, she said in a brooding tone of morbid fatality. It is not, he said curtly. Unless you make it so, unless you play the weakling and the fool and throw yourself away. For God's sakes, don't let that happen to you. I have seen it happen to so many people, some of them fine people like yourself, full of energy, imagination, intelligence, ability, all thrown away, frittered away like that." He flung fat fingers in the air, because they did not have the guts to use what God had given them, to make a new life for themselves, to stand on their own feet, and not to lean upon another's shoulder. Don't die that death, he rasped coarsely, staring at her with his brutal face. Don't die the rotten, lousy, dirty death in life, the only death that's really horrible. For God's sakes, don't betray life and yourself and the people who love you for dying that kind of death. In other words, you cannot let yourself succumb to these feelings of hopelessness and die an early spiritual death or emotional death due to this loss. I read most of it, and I read that part, and I'm like, there we go. That's what I'm taking from this song right there is don't let that happen. So,
And that's
Yeah,
the
that-
don't stop sort of vibe.
yeah, that could really spur you into action too, because you just get to that point of emotional frustration. Like, this is like bullcrap what's happening right now. I gotta do something to change it. I gotta change my headspace. I gotta change my perspective, how I look at things. And I think that's like you guys already mentioned it. It's like that's where he is. He's like, okay, that's how it is, you know. And then from there, you have to proceed on and never give up. And of course, you never did give up. But I think that's the thing that's the magic of it, that you have those conversations with yourself. If you don't have that input from outside, who can observe you, like you had mentioned before, David, with the golf analogy, where someone's looking at the outside of what you're doing, but you're not really there unless you're saying something aloud and you're hearing yourself say it. Then you're like, oh, wait a minute, So I think there's a little bit of that going on for Neil, just in a one complete package, that he's serving all these masters, So
Yeah.
it's interesting.
Like everybody in this kind of position says explicitly or implicitly, I can't stay here, right? And so how you don't stay there is the issue. Whether it's I think of Presto, uh, the pass, you know, that's I can't stay here, you know. And but there are other ways, not to stay here, and that's shoulder to the wheel, foot up on the stair.
You bring up the past. I'm starting to wonder if this is also reaching to the future in that shoulder to the wheel. It makes me think of the imagery that was used for Working Them Angels, which I plan on talking about possibly on that song as far as the Lewis Hine photograph, which I'd have more to say about that. And I don't want to, jump ahead to another album, but just the idea that the imagery of the shoulder into the work that gets you out of. I mean, at that point, all right, I'm starting to want to talk about the photograph. I'm going to step back from that. on the negative side, I think of Sisyphus with the idea of the shoulder to the boulder. Same thing, same thing, same thing, same thing. Got to get out of this. And in this case, it's the positive of the shoulder to the wheel, where he, had to get moving. And how did he get moving? Jump on a bike, go across Canada, go down to Belize, et cetera, et cetera. We know the story.
Get busy living or get busy dying. Go all Shawshank about it.
Andy.
Awesome. You guys leave me speechless sometimes like this, so much to think about, so many good things. And like, us five knuckleheads, right? And probably most of our viewers, we've all experienced to some degree or another loss, pain, and we can't all jump on a motorcycle and drive 50,000 miles and do all that, So you still have to figure out how you're going to do it with the tools and, opportunities that you have. What songs like this, for me, just speaking subjectively, is that you can. It's not easy. It's not candy coated. You can't see past the cloudy day and the frustrations and all that, but you can do it, So listeners, viewers, you can do it.
I'll even take a step further and say you must is what I take out of that.
You don't have a choice in that case, right? You're going to do something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, starting to get a little too heavy here. Refocus on my, Alex the Bag t-shirt.
Where's the bag?
You probably baloney. Anyway, where's the bag? Howdy, where's the bag? You've seen the documentary, you know what I'm talking about. And then it goes back, the song wraps up Another cloudy day seems we'll never see the sun or feel the day has possibilities. So frozen in the moment, the lack of imagination between how it is and how it ought to be, between how it is and how it ought to be. So right before that, as somebody pointed out, I think Paul, it's no longer between, it's just that's how it is. We recognize that, but it's still a challenge. It's still a struggle. You want it to be how it ought to be, or how you feel that it ought to be. Um, and the existential angst is rooted in the fact that it's not how it ought to be. There's ultra, I don't know if psychology uses it anymore. This is ages ago, but they used to talk about the neurotic gap. The gap between how things are and how you want them to be. The bigger the gap, the greater the neuroses. you know, the angst, the struggle. So this is where we are. You know, um, song before this, all this stuff is going on. Stars look down, right? They don't care. They're just the stars. You know, and here you are feeling abandoned. And in Ghost Rider, I think Neil talked about this quite a bit in different ways or different language. That the universe really doesn't, pardon family viewers, give a fuck about what's going on.
Yep.
All that. And so you feel that. You really, really feel that. It's very easy to be an individualist when everything is going well and you're on top.
Excellent point.
Yeah.
But when life throws the curveballs that we can't control, it's difficult, and you just want the universe, something, somebody to care. But even when they do, you still have to go through it. And I think this song, last shit I'll say, I'm the host, you guys should talk. Is that you just have to keep going through it. Don't have a choice. And eventually, spoiler alert, more often than not, it's going to be okay.
And also, minor spoiler alert for Ghost Rider, with other people. Notice that once he becomes open to, and this can happen to anyone, becomes open to like getting out of that trapped headspace of this is the only existence I can be aware of right now, and you do start to let other people, and that's when the healing begins. It's when the acceptance begins, and that will take us into, well, we got one more song before that happens, but sequencing wise on the album. But after that total hopelessness, then it's found in other people. So minor spoiler for Ghost Rider.
It's when you meet your own Carrie.
Exactly. And allow your friends to actually correspond and start going to social functions again and all that.
It just takes the guys in South Park to say, hey, we're having a party here for Halloween. Come on down.
Right.
That makes me think of a story. It was during all this time for Neil, but Get and Al had shut down too, right? They weren't going out, they weren't going anywhere. The band was over, and Robert Plant was playing in Toronto, and he reached out and got in touch with Getty and said, "Come out to the show." And it was that sort of nudge, knowing the place they were at. That was that, yeah, sort of communal, other people that stepped in. And of course, they had much respect for Led Zeppelin and Plant and Page, obviously, because they were so influenced by them in those early days. But, serious hat tip to Robert Plant to reach out to them at their lowest and say, get out of the house, guys, come out to the show.
And
I've
that,
forgotten
yes,
about that.
that's right. In Getty's book, he references that Robert Plant had lost his son too and had something to offer Getty about that. Right.
That's right.
Yep. Good catch.
Cool.
Yep.
So that's how it is.
I gotta say,
And-
if I can interrupt, I'm going to do it. Just you got to deal with it.
That's how it is.
Yes, it is. I've always been a fan. Actually, I can't say I've always been a fan, but I've enjoyed their fade out songs as much as their concrete ending songs. This song does offer a concrete ending where they do end on that D chord that is a bright chord, that is a reassuring chord, and also the fact that the measure leading up to it, that 12 string notes, F sharp, G, D, E, it's not dissonant, but there's dissonance in there with that F sharp against the G. So it's kind of a license suspension in a way that kind of, it's not really a suspension, but moves us into a nice resolution point for that D to kind of say, we began bright, we got a little heavy with the Mixolydian, we're going back and forth, we're ending bright with that nice resolution point to move us into what comes next, the next song, but what comes next. I had to say
It's
that.
kind of it's an open-ended chord, right?
Like D major, D major is the happiest of all keys. So,
one would assume at
as
that
opposed
point,
to D minor, which is quite sad. So,
what's the name of that piece he's working on?
is Lick My Love Pump is what it's called. Chords intertwining.
Little Mozart, little Bach.
It's like a mock piece, yes.
It's a mock piece. I actually am just drinking water, so yes, it's it's nothing heavy.
I'm drinking Irish whiskey, so it's nothing heavy.
On a side note, I did see this song played live at the R40 in Boston, which was back on June 23rd. So that was 9 years ago. Yeah.
For me, it was Dallas.
And the only songs off Vapor Trails, I was very interested to see this, is the only songs that represented Vapor Trails were One Little Victory and How It Is, but Vapor Trails was represented no matter what. I like that as far as the R40 list goes.
Nice.
Yeah, they alternated between those two songs, didn't they, in their set list?
Yeah.
Oh, and nothing to do with the episode, but Alex Lifeson's solo record, Victor, is being reissued. That's cool.
And on vinyl for the first time.
That's coming up in August, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Think about 6 weeks away, 5 weeks away. And you get the many people saying, are there new tracks? And I'm thinking to myself, are there new tracks? We don't know. It'd be awesome. But I guess we'll all just find out when we get it. Just get it.
That's how it is.
Envy of None is working on new stuff, or they've recorded new stuff already, I think,
Yeah.
So that's terrific. Any closing thoughts, you wonderful, wonderful people?
This song is a welcome break considering what is coming up next. Vapor Trail is my favorite song off the album, but Light, it is not. So it's after going through the songs we've gotten to.
Live,
no,
right?
Correct.
Yeah. And I remember in Russian Rio, somebody was holding up a sign, play Vapor Trail. Great song. Anybody else? Okay. All right. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in, for watching. We appreciate it so much. Again, like, subscribe, leave a comment. Tell us what you think, how much you loved what we do, or things you'd like to see us do, or critiques. We're open to all of that. It's a very Rush thing to do, to listen to one another, right? And to always try to be better. Check out our sponsors, links in the video description. Check out Tip Us on Ko-fi. Check that out. We're there. It all supports. None of us are, retiring early from any of this. It's not that at all. We just want to keep this great band and its music, to do our part to share it with others. So help us out. We'd appreciate it. And until next time, rush on. We'll see you soon.
That's how it is.